The Emperor has foreseen a new threat rising against him. The Podwans Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podwans Podcast. I am not your normal host, Chase Harith, Luke, or wow, brain's not working at all today, Char. I am Nick, aka NDWiseguy, subbing in for those guys. They have a very important task of their own coming up this weekend. We are here today to talk about all things the High Republic. This week, the final book in the High Republic has come out, Trials of the Jedi. If you've started to read it, I hope you're enjoying it. I certainly have been. We're not going to be talking about that today. There'll be no spoilers for that or the most recent other book, Wayseeker. What we are going to be talking about, though, is why you should be reading the High Republic, why it is a must-read, why it is one of the most exciting eras in Star Wars storytelling. I'm so happy you're here to join us today. I've got a few great guests with me today, and we'll bring them in right away. First up, you've seen him all over TikTok. He constantly talks about his love of Star Wars books and comics. Let me introduce everyone to Alex.
Hey. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm thrilled to be here. Always happy to talk about some High Republic. I've been reading Trials of the Jedi literally all day today, trying to get, I want to get out my thoughts on it as soon as possible. So it's all fresh in mind, although we won't be discussing the events of that one, obviously.
Yes. No, it's same for me. I'm just finishing up on it. So I think you and I are going to have some good conversations about that over on the other video app, as they call it. Thanks for joining us, though. I'm so happy to have you here.
It's a pleasure.
Also joining us today, he is one half of Diet in the Force. He makes his game on TikTok, taking down every carpet nugget he can see. Please, everyone, welcome Element 7.
Hello.
How are you doing
How are you guys
today?
Doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for
Excited to
joining.
talk about High Republic and stuff.
Exactly. Been trying to get Luke to do this for months, and the first time I get him away is the time I get to do this. So I'm excited.
Can't stop you now.
No one can stop me unless he pops up in the chat. Then I'm in trouble. But anyways, we're here today to talk about something that is unfortunately ending this week, the High Republic. The last 4 years, we've seen so many books, so many comics, TV shows. I would love to start off with a simple question for you guys. It may be simple. It sounds simple. What is your favorite moment in the High Republic? And also, what is your favorite phase in the High Republic? And Alex, I'll let you answer first.
Interesting. It's a tough question. I've been mulling over what beats to talk about. I think phase overall, my favorite phase might be 2, just because there are so many characters in there that I found really charming. But the thing is, what makes it so great is the way that the different phases interact with one another. It's funny, this is the minutia that I love. One of my favorite moments was reading the short story about Bell at the start of phase 3, and he boards a fishing boat for a couple of months, and I had to go back and reread to make sure I was hearing, because I listened to the audiobooks. The boat is named after Queen Siri from phase 2, and it implies this history between the past and the present that is just so nice. I think my favorite moment, though, it's tough to beat the very first. The Great Hyperspace Disaster is such an electric scene. It's half the book, and it's just so much happening. It evolves in so many interesting ways. It floored me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That is definitely a top moment for me. I listened to it from the audiobook, so listening to Mark Thompson's narration of that had me hooked. I think I listened to the entire first half of that book in one sitting because I just couldn't put it down. Pep, how about you? What's your favorite moment in the High Republic and your favorite phase?
So you can't beat phase 1. That's just the thing that started it all and introduced us to the entire era. And there's some highs and lows in all of the phases, but just being able to be at the forefront of a new period of time in Star Wars is a kind of catharsis that doesn't come along every every day. And the favorite moment is a tie for me. So I'm going to say, because we're not talking about too much spoilers, but the first time in Light of the Jedi, and I think it's chapter 8 or 7, the first time we're like counting down to the hyperspace disaster, and the first time we hear Avar Chris come over to the comms and says, "This is Jedi Master Avar Chris. We're here to help." And that's when I knew that I was like, "Oh, this is like the Jedi, like for sure." Because the only time we've seen the Jedi is when they're at their weakest, when they're filled with hubris and they're making mistakes and they're pushed into a corner by Palpatine, and that signified a moment where we were going to join the Jedi, where they were normalized in society, and we were going to see what they do. How do they help the galaxy when they're not connected to the body politic, when they're not forced into a war? And then the rest of the book came, and that was it. Like we were off to the races. And that moment is tied with another moment from Midnight Horizon.
Oh, I think I know which one you're going to say.
Well, it's a combination of two different moments.
Okay.
But it's not what you think. But they both involve Yoda, which is my favorite character in canon. Without, to speak ambiguously and without kind of spoiling anything, the first moment is realizing what it all meant to Cantum Psi. Because you thought that was like, oh, okay, so that's the decision he made. But then, like, when it comes full circle and Yoda says what he says, you're like, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And then, of course, the second part of Yoda coming back towards the end. I'm not going to say what happens, but he comes back, and that's it.
He's Yoda. Like, yeah. He's Yoda in that moment.
That was his anime moment.
Yes. That's a great description of it. Actually, I would agree with that wholeheartly.
Just like since we're speaking ambiguously without spoilers, just imagine your favorite anime and like, your team is on the ropes and they're like, it's over.
It's Goku showing up on what's Namek. Goku showing up on Namek.
Yeah.
But imagine he's shorter and green.
Like the beam is coming at somebody, and then they recoil, and then like it doesn't hit him, and then he looks up.
I really want to second the whole idea of what makes the High Republic so extraordinary really is what you were describing about this is the Jedi, as I think a lot of people wanted them to be in the prequels. I remember a big contention point when the prequels came out was what you were describing, that the Jedi were very flawed and bogged down by stuff. And this is the Jedi that everyone envisioned. This is the Jedi that, frankly, I think Obi-Wan is describing in A New Hope, because he's thinking about the height of them. He's thinking about what they were supposed to be. And we finally get to see in action, yes, exactly, like they are the people who are here to help. Yeah,
no, I would agree entirely. So I would agree with Pep myself. My favorite phase was phase 1. Phase 1, and especially Light of the Jedi, really invigorated my love for Star Wars. To see a new era that was completely unbound by any legacy of the movies or the existing TV shows or anything to do. They were just this brand new set of characters was so exciting for me. To see them, like you've said, at the height of their light, like not the height of their power, but at the height of their light. This is an order that's there and they're helping people because they want to help people, not because the Republic is saying they have to go and help people. And I loved seeing that free flowing assistance. my
It also set the tone too. It's just not to interrupt.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just wanted to kind of add in. It also set the tone that like nobody was gonna be safe.
True.
yes,
Yeah.
I think
Like
we
this
can.
isn't a spoiler to say that like you meet a lot of Jedi and you're like, oh, they're pretty cool, and then like the next sentence they're dead.
They're
Like,
dead.
never mind.
Yeah, if there has been one constant in the now 4 years of being a High Republic fan, it is pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that has not changed in Phase 3 at all.
Yeah. Oh,
So not so again, speaking ambiguously, one of my favorite characters from the High Republic has perpetually pristine robes. And when that happened in I think it was Fallen Star, I believe. When
Yes.
that happened,
Yeah.
I dropped my book, and then I tried to catch it, and as I caught it, the top part of the page kind of ripped. The page that ripped was the page it was on. And I was like,
Oh,
the Force. You're killing me here, dude.
the loss broke through
That-
to Yoda dropping his cane on Kashyyyk. No.
whoa.
I was surprised by that, to stay. It feels only somewhat vague, but I was surprised how hard that hit me too. That was not a character that I would have expected like this much reaction, but I was devastated.
Yeah.
Because there are
Were
so
you
many,
also like,
there are so many
were you
others
also
in
like,
Fallen Star too.
yeah, were you also like with that specific character? Were you also like, oh, if anybody can kind of resist this,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
no.
I was like,
No one's
Yeah.
they gotta be okay. Oh,
They never are.
they never are. Oh man.
I will say that my favorite moment, well, what might become my favorite moment has happened in Trials of the Jedi. And I will simply refer to chapter 22. If you've gotten that far, you'll know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, I'll leave it. But my favorite moment is in Phase 3, but it's in Temptation of the Force. And it's the conversation between Elzar and Yoda. And to me, it is better than anything that I've seen in Star Wars. The best conversation about how non-attachment works for the Jedi and how love works for the Jedi. And it plays so well when you think about what Anakin says in Attack of the Clones as to what Jedi are encouraged to do. And here's Yoda 250 years previous giving that exact same lesson to Elzar Mann. And I just thought it was such a beautiful conversation. It was so well handled. And it will stick with me, I think, for years beyond having read that book.
Yeah, I do want to. I want to respond to that. But first, I want to say, as far as chapter 22, I'm stuck because I may have read that. I have no idea what the chapter numbers are, if anything. I have no clue if I've reached that or not. But yeah, Temptation. I love that. There are so many people who chalk up Anakin falling to like, oh, the Jedi did a bad job teaching him, and like it's the Jedi's fault, and they blame all of Anakin's terrible decisions on the Jedi. And I love that Temptation of the Force makes clear that no, he could have talked to them about Padme. They've made exceptions before. Broadly they dismiss this stuff. And frankly, I don't know that they would have made an exception for Anakin because they could tell, anyone looking at him could tell he couldn't handle that. But, the fact is that like, yeah, they are not like completely strict, rigid. They are understanding and cooperative, and they make exceptions where they need them. And Avar and Elzar are a perfect example of people who can handle some measure of attachment without falling to the dark.
Yeah, I think that was a conversation when basically when it came down to it, Yoda was like, I don't know.
I do think he was kind of like, yeah. He sort of said to Elzar, like, you seem like you already know the answer.
Yeah.
Like, I can't stop you. Go for it, man.
And
I love
it
it.
kind of goes hand in hand with what Rey says to Luke in The Last Jedi. It's like, you didn't fail Kylo failed you.
Yeah.
And it seems to pass over a lot of people's heads that there is another possibility to or there is another explanation for Anakin's fall, which is he failed to learn, right?
Mhm.
He had all of this knowledge inside of him. He tells Padme, obsession, possession is forbidden, but we're encouraged to love. And everybody else has the same kind of teachings within them. And this is my answer to everybody who keeps on saying the Jedi indoctrinate. It's like we have so many different Jedi that think differently, right? And we have the Lost 20, and we have people who have left the Jedi Order. And it goes to show that while the teachings may be flawed, it is the flawed human that misinterprets them as well. Because we also have a lot of examples in the High Republic of people taking a broad strokes saying that's taught in the temple, and they're like, oh, so it means this, and their master's like, no, hold on. So yeah, I mean, it really does come down to the individual Jedi, and that conversation between Elzar and Yoda truly kind of like it's a great example of a master who is still learning and who doesn't think, oh, I'm a master now, so I've leveled up, I'm at max level. But it also shows that even the Grandmaster Yoda is like, these are questions that I still ask myself and I don't know the answers to. And it shows the stark difference between Elzar and Anakin for sure.
Yes, and I think that's like, I mean, that's always been a popular topic in the High Republic fandom. How is basically Elzar Mann is Anakin Skywalker if he was allowed to express his feelings.
Yeah.
Or
if he was willing
allowed
to,
or had the ability to.
and
Exactly.
and
Anakin
and
chooses.
people were accepting of those feelings. Like, and I think that's the really cool thing that makes, for me anyways, the Jedi in the High Republic era so unique is they don't come across as automatons. They feel fear, they feel anger, they feel love, and that's okay. That's not a thing that people look down on as a problem, and Elzar is a great example of that. I think if Elzar had touched the dark side the way that he did in Phase 1, he would not still be in the Jedi Order by Phase 3 if he was in the prequels, because the Jedi Order of Phase 3 felt much more rigid in their structure and their guidelines than, or no, not in Phase 3, in the prequels, felt much more rigid than the Jedi of the High Republic.
But
And
you felt that progression
definitely
in Phase 3.
Yes.
The cracks are there.
Yeah. And I think like the Acolyte does a brilliant job of showing how those cracks get even further. The Living Forest by John Jackson Miller does a brilliant job of it. And that was the really cool thing, is that these stories, Phase 1 and Phase 3, take all in place within a year and a bit of each other. But you see how quickly that progression happens in that time.
Yeah. War brings out the worst in them.
Yeah.
And I would love to see, something I've said for years is I really want to know what the active Sith Lord of this period thinks about the conflict, because I still don't think they've committed to anything, right? They haven't said who's around. I would love to know, are they interested in this conflict? Do they see the Nile as just like a temporary thing? Are they worried that they might bring down the Republic before the Sith can? I'd love if they like had a moment of like, we're seeing the Jedi being kind of brought to a place that they aren't comfortable with. I'd love if maybe this sparked just a little bit, like, keep it in the back pocket. We incite a war and the Jedi are forced to compromise on their ideals. Like, we'll return to this later.
I think for sure the Sith assumed a stance of we're gonna be the leopard. We're gonna pounce on this. Like, they're eternal opportunists. So I think if things fell to the Nile and the Republic looked way different, Palpatine and Plagueis and that line of Bainite Sith would have made designs for them to capitalize on that. So I think either way, when they saw the Nile and everything going down, they were probably like, interesting. Let's see how this plays out.
And yeah,
Definitely, no, I agree. I mean, they played the long game for literally thousands of years. I would be shocked if they weren't interested observers into how that conflict played out, and definitely took away, to your point, Alex, methods by which to start to wear down the Jedi Order as a whole. Which, I mean, for all we could have found out in the Acolyte, if we ever get a season 2, please renew the Acolyte. That might have been the plan, right? You know, we know that Plagueis is there at that time. There's the strong, I think there was the strong hint from Leslie that the senator that Vernestra interacts with somehow was going to have a role to play with Plagueis. I thought I remembered reading that somewhere. I may be wrong. So there was definitely, those machinations were afoot by the time the Acolyte came, and I think we would have seen that play out if we get more of that show.
interesting.
But who knows? Never say never. I'm still hoping.
Fingers crossed.
Well, really quickly before we continue, I'm gonna go audio only because I have some dinner to eat, but I'll still be listening and contributing.
Nope,
Right.
that's fair. Enjoy. So, Alex, important question to you: what makes the High Republic a must-read for the Star Wars fans?
Man, well, I think largely it's what I was talking about. This is the Jedi Order that people always dreamed of. You know, this is what people imagined when Obi-Wan described the Guardians of Peace and Justice in the galaxy. And while, you know, the prequels sentiment has obviously warmed to them over the last couple of years, and we accept that it's like them in decline, it's the end of the era. It is nice seeing like this is what the Jedi are meant to be. This is the ideal version of the Jedi. You know, like you said, height of their power isn't quite right, because I would say honestly the height of their power is probably the Clone Wars, but that's exactly the problem, is they're not supposed to be a very powerful order. They're a smaller but better organization in this time period. And really it's just some high quality Star Wars. You know, you've got all these characters building off of each other, books connecting in interesting ways, even with old EU material. I recommend it constantly to EU fans. I did a bunch just earlier today because, you know, it slots in very nicely. There's very little stuff in this period, so you can basically think of this as a part of the EU timeline. And it shows, you know, the potential of the Jedi Order. I think it's also very reminiscent of like Luke's Jedi Order in the EU. You know, better than the ones in the prequels.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think like I would agree with what you said about the quality of the stories. I think, you know, if you look at any long running series, in my opinion, of Star Wars novels in the EU, there's always low points, things that people will look at and go, oh yeah, don't read that don't judge that series by that book. And I think the quality in this era of storytelling has been so consistently strong, whether it's been the adult books, the mid-grade books, the comics. They clearly came into this with a plan as to what it was they wanted to start with, where they were going to go, and how they were going to finish. And it shows to me in, like, you know, whether it's the High Republic Adventures that Daniel Jose Older writes, or the mid-grade books that we've seen from the likes of Justina Ireland or Tessa Gratton. The story quality has been fantastic throughout.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, I can only think of like a handful in the entire High Republic span, because I haven't read like many of the comics. But as far as the books, maybe 3, maybe 4 that I didn't like really like. You know, I thought like, oh, this one was just okay. This one was kind of like everything else has been so excellent, including like it doesn't draw the line at middle grade novels, which I kind of, you know, expected, like, oh, these will be cute but otherwise insignificant. But no, there are some really charming things in the middle grade. The very first one, Test of Courage, really surprised me with how solid it was. And one of the last ones, I struggle so much with some of the names because I read all of these so quickly in audiobook. So like some of the ones blend together a little bit. But the first one that introduced Churro the Hutt, is so.
Beware the Nameless.
Yes, that was it. It's so charming. Like that one really had me absolutely
I still have
enthralled.
to read that.
It's
You
a
haven't? Oh yeah.
Churro, he's one of my favorite High Republic characters. He's so cute.
He is a Hutt unlike any Hutt you will ever meet in Star Wars. I can pretty much guarantee that.
What if a Hutt was nice?
He's
It's
a
such a
Hutt.
simple idea.
They will never have Hut as much as he Hut.
Have to say that 5 times fast now.
Well, to answer your question, I do want to build off of what Alex just said. I always recommend the High Republic as well to people who are fans of the EU, simply because if you were audacious enough to follow the EU prior to Disney, wow, like props. But also like you should be thrilled to follow along the new EU. Right? This is the start of something that you could be at the ground level with, you know? Imagine being a new Star Wars fan today and looking at this vast swath of things you have to catch up with, including the shows, but then you have books as well. But if you start from Light of the Jedi, you've got a clear plan all the way to the end, and you're like, that's the era. It's almost as if like if you started the EU with Heir to the Empire, and that all the way from what was it, Nest to Fate to Legacy. That was all one. That imagine that was all one initiative, like the High Republic. They would have had a clear book 1 to book 24 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's why I always recommend this particular era to people who were interested in the EU and on the Legends continuity, and also to just be a part of something that's new, you know, because like one of the things that Lucasfilm had to contend with coming in post purchase is charting a new path from ground that has been already been laid. And I often tell people the reason why I grant such leniency to the sequels, even though, you know, 2/3 of the sequels are really low on my ranking, I grant them leniency because they didn't have an episode 10 to lead up to. Right? George did 4, 5, and 6, and the prequels were like, okay, we just need to lead up to Vader now. So let's tell that story. And then after 6, you're like, where do we go? And so there was a lot of the task of charting new territory is a daunting task. And so with the High Republic, they had an opportunity to go further in time, and they also kind of had the same advantage of knowing where they were going, right? They were like, okay, we need to go to the prequel Jedi. How do we get there? We give them a conflict so impactful and profound that it causes them to shake the foundations of the order that lead to them becoming the Jedi that was so rigid and filled with hubris. The Jedi that started the first episode with the Sith have been extinct for a millennia. As Qui-Gon fights a Sith.
Core lesson of every era of Star Wars: Ki-Adi-Mundi is always wrong. Absolute worst. I've had people on my lives try to tell me like, "Oh, Ki-Adi, he's so great in the comics." I refuse. I don't want to believe it.
You know, in Living Force, it really is recontextualized, and I do respect Ki-Adi-Mundi more.
Mm-hmm.
But he still annoys the shit out of me. I find it funny in the Acolyte visual guide. they made it a point to have the sentence there. He's like, "Oh, he has a weakness for jumping to favored conclusions." So you're like, okay, so it's canon that he has these wild theories, and he's like, I like that one. I'm gonna go for that one.
They
Everyone-
did they put his birthday in there? I just want to know if they put that in there to annoy
No, they
certain
didn't.
people. No, oh, it's too bad.
Oh.
I was hopeful.
Yes.
I mean, like I don't know about you guys too. Like I'm the same way. I do recommend this to friends that I have who are fans of the EU. I also recommend the High Republic to people who just want to get into Star Wars, because there is no baggage with it. There is no go to the EU, but you know you're gonna find people who hate it and love it and whatnot. It's like this is like a completely, like you said, a new era with a new set of characters and a clean start point. And I always recommend that to someone who's looking to get into Star Wars as a way to get into it. For that reason, it doesn't come with that baggage of the Chosen One prophecy, or you know, is Luke whiny or not, or all these other things. So
Or if a
I
person loves reading books and just doesn't, watch the stuff, it's a good entry point too.
it is, yeah. And
That's
I
it.
always recommend the audiobooks too. I think they've done a fantastic job with the audiobook productions, even with the young adult and the mid-grade ones. I mean, obviously, Mark Thompson up here amongst everybody else. January Lavoie does brilliant jobs with the stories that she does. But even the mid-grade books, I find are quite good with that.
The only reason I ever hold off on recommending the High Republic is I even hesitate recommending people trilogies. Telling someone you should jump into these 3 books is always a little daunting. Telling someone, like, start with this, it's 24 books long. Like, whew, it's a lot. I usually try to, like, maybe dip your toes in with a one-off, and then if you enjoy that, I absolutely recommend, it's such an enriching experience reading these longer series, but it's a lot to get someone new into. Like,
it is.
one of 30.
I tend to recommend to start with the adult books. And I think the really cool thing that I have found with the High Republic is that you can read the adult books and you get the main plot of that phase, whether it's phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3. And those young adults and those mid-grade books just add context and enrichment to the tapestry of the story that's being told in those adult books.
True. I do think, I don't know, because I had a whole situation where I found myself needing to read through these as quick as I could to catch up to 2 of them. And I considered doing, like some people recommended you could read just 3 trilogies.
Yep.
Phase 1 would just be Light of the Jedi, Rising Storm, Fallen Star. And like, while I can see that, you get the bulk of it, if I had started Fallen Star not knowing who Affy and Leox and Geode were, I feel like it's like, you could read it and you wouldn't be like confused or anything, but I feel like you're missing so much of what has made this great is the way that the characters build off of everything. And on Trials now, without getting too much into spoilers and just saying who's in it, Reef has so much that is built up over those same young adult novels.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd be missing so much about him if I didn't know him from all of that.
No, definitely, I agree. Like the mid-grade and the young adult books they add so much to the events in the context of the adult books. 100%.
I think
agree
you
on
could
that.
probably skip most of the middle grade. It's a shame. They're good, but I think the only thing you'd really be missing is Vernestra, who does show up in some of the young adults. So you'd still get like the.
I mean,
Spark Notes
Escape
break
from Valo, though.
Escape from
Race to
Valo.
Crash Point.
Race to Crash Point Tower. Those are both mid-grade books.
But I mean, how vital are they? Like, Escape from
Hey.
Valo.
I will not stand on any tep erasure in
This
this
is not-
in this podcast
I
episode.
adore Tep Tep. And I adore Churro.
Well, actually, it is. Well, I wouldn't say any of them are vital, but
That's the thing.
you
can
meet
skip them
Real
without
Dyro.
reading.
You met Real Dyro in Race to Crash Point.
That's true.
Is that
So, like, if you're
Actually,
reading into like the whole, not to spoil anything, the whole inclusion zone bit,
Mhm.
and you're meeting her and what she's doing, you're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I wonder why she's doing that. and then you get the backstory and the origin.
That's true.
And Race to Crash Point Tower. I do want to say though that when it comes to the junior novels and the middle grade books in this era, it comes with a certain amount of trust and maturity that, like, say the Jedi Quest books was just like, oh, this is really just for kids, But like, let's say, like you said, A Test of Courage really surprised you. That junior novel, even though it's a junior novel and it skews towards the really, really young, it really trusts the kid to be a bit more on the mature side.
Yeah,
absolutely. That was what surprised me about it is, I can't speak to any of the others. I haven't gotten to like Young Jedi Knights, Jedi Quest. I don't know like how mature or immature those are, but this being my first like young adult, first middle grade novel in Star Wars, I was expecting like, they get into a crisis and I'm like, okay, yeah, but it's for kids. So like everything's going to work out more or less. They're going to have a happy reunion. And then like, no, wow, this has gotten very real very quickly. I was really just impressed that they took such a bold first swing. And then the rest of that book is also like, it's a story that I could see in any regular Star Wars fiction. Aside from the fact that it's about the kids, it does not like pull its punches. It is very earnestly engaging with like, this is the danger of being in a war zone and stuff.
Yeah.
And
then
to
kind of build off of Nick's point about it being an entry point for everyone, it really is a really great entry point for new Star Wars fans, because if someone asks you on your channel,
he's in the chat,
else,
guys. He's in the
shout
chat.
out to Tamar from Rings of Power. If anyone has ever asked you, where should I start with Star Wars books, what's the first question you ask them?
What do you like?
What do you like?
Yeah. Or what is your favorite era? Like, what's your favorite trilogy? In this case, though, it's an entirely new era. So, like, even with that type of question, you can answer, start with the High Republic. Like, there's like Nick said, there's no baggage, there's no prior knowledge needed. Like, you're literally in a new era, and it'll quickly get you into what makes Star Wars Star Wars. And then it'll kind of dovetail you into the primary timeline that we're always concerned with, from the main Skywalker saga to everything else. So
yeah,
it really is a great entry point.
It is. Shout out to Phase 2 superfan Kels. Hey Kels, hope you're well.
Howdy. I want to say any actual Padawans, get out of the chat. We're taking over.
Exactly.
Our show now.
Shout out to Fontu and Ziri.
Yes. And I think I think it's really, and the other thing that I think is really cool about this era is it is not focused on the Sith or some preconception of the dark side. Like, we get an entirely new type of villain in the Nihil who they just want to destroy stuff. That's kind of their thing. They're smash and grab guys. And I mean, at least that's how they're presented to start. And I think that, that is such a cool and different challenge to what we've seen the Jedi anywhere, whether it's the prequels, the originals, the sequels, or even the EU have to deal with on such a large scale. And of course, at the top of that is everyone's favorite slutty blue daddy, Markion Rowe, who, again, such a different type of villain. And I'm curious to know from the both of you, where do you think he stacks up now that we're getting to the end of the High Republic? Where does he stack up amongst the greats of the Star Wars villains?
I mean, for sexiest, number one, easy. I mean, it can be two, but compared to Palpatine and Vader, he's got an easy edge.
It's true.
He's definitely up there, for sure.
Yeah.
With the best of them. I think to your point, we didn't know how they were going to handle this conflict with Jedi at the height of their light and their power. And I say that liberally because they are truly at the height of their power, which is why I love Mask of Fear and how Mon Mothma makes a speech about the Jedi have been at the height of their power for 1,000 years, and they could have made the play for the throne, quote unquote.
Easily.
Didn't.
Which, by the way, Harith, if you're still here, read Mask of Fear already.
They were content
Everyone
with
else
sitting
also.
in their spires and just kind of, doodling on their drawing papers or whatever. But yeah, I was like, well, obviously we're not going to do the Sith because they've been extinct for a millennium. So what are they going to deal with that is so kind of prolific and so threatening? And when they revealed the Nile, I was like, interesting. It's just a band of marauders. I don't know how. I guess we can just get a whole bunch of skirmishes and then they get lucky at times. But the way that they portrayed Markion, not only in Light of the Jedi, but in subsequent novels, how they portrayed his tactics and what truly made the Nile a powerful and very equal threat. I don't know if I'm using that word correctly. They are how Markion operates the Nile is how they measure up to a threat as big as a Sith, because it threatens the very foundations of the Republic, but it also threatens the very foundations of their ideology. And the weapon that we're not going to talk about in depth is certainly something that we're familiar with from the old EU, but definitely poses a huge threat to the Jedi as they are.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I would agree with you completely. Like, the way that Charles in Light of the Jedi unfolds and unpacks Markion from kind of this seemingly timid, has taken his father's place and is kind of ruling, but the people below him think that they can just do what they want, to where he even just gets to at the end of that novel is such a brilliant reveal. And it's such a masterstroke of character development to see how he progresses from that story all the way through now into Trials. Like, I think it's fair to say that no one truly knows what Markion is doing other than Markion. And like, that's some like Palpatine level stuff. Like, no one knew what Palpatine was doing except Palpatine. And for him to do that and do that with the Jedi at the height of their light, the height of their influence, to me is such a masterstroke of a villain to be able to strike the way that he did.
Yeah.
It's
even that was my third favorite too.
Mm-hmm.
So I say again, Pep?
That's my third favorite moment from all of the High Republic, which I don't know how we're gonna do this without spoiling anything.
Phase one, we can. I mean, at this point, phase one we can talk about. Phase one's been out for like 3-4 years. We can talk about big strokes. I think that's fine.
All right, big strokes. Okay. The when that family was attacked on Elfrona and they answered that call. When they finally heard Markion take responsibility for that and said, "Is my voice familiar?" and he revealed that he's the one that made the distress call, I was like, this guy's operating on so many levels, like Palpatine levels, and I wasn't prepared for that. And that was one of my favorite moments. That's when I knew he was going to be great.
and to me, like, that was incredible. And then his speech at the end of Fallen Star, like this, here I am to the galaxy, who thought that they were so sure, who they knew the the eye of the storm of the Nihil were was just, again, like such a brilliant moment because it's delivered with just this like cold indifference almost. He's like, here I am. This was all me, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's so well played.
And I think it's
Definitely a
fascinating.
contrast too to the Sith's shadow thing. It's like,
Yes.
no, I'm here.
Yeah, absolutely in the light. And it's funny, he's a very similar like level of scheming to Palpatine. Like he spends a lot of time setting up his chips before he knocks anything down. But Palpatine, like one thing I love about him is that he's very simple to understand. Like everything about Palpatine is pretty much, as a viewer on the surface, he's evil and he wants power and he wants it because he wants to be powerful and evil. He wants to keep doing evil things. Markion is such a complicated, like even halfway through Trials of the Jedi, you're still trying to get inside his head because you can see what his goals are and it's very clear to see how he's working to achieve them. But it's still like I still didn't understand like what he was getting out of it until like now, he's still revealing exactly why he's doing any of this. Because at first it does seem like Palpatine, certainly end of Light of the Jedi, it's like, okay, it's a power grab. He wants to be ruler of the Republic or something. But as you go on, it's like, no, there's something more. That doesn't satisfy him either. He's a villain. Like, I don't want to get into exactly what he's going for, but genuinely, even relative to Palpatine, I think this is just a sociopath who simply doesn't care about anything else that exists and is just in it for like whatever his whims carry. He fought the Republic because he thought it was there to fight.
Yeah.
He's a fascinating guy. I like him.
I'd actually put him above Palpatine in some
Really?
respects. In some respects. So think about what Markion has been able to do from an adversarial position. Whereas what Palpatine has accomplished by bamboozling people from within, right?
Mm-hmm.
Markion has completely owned and taken responsibility for all the attacks. He's public enemy number one. He's the bad guy. Palpatine's just like, oh, I need to help Naboo. Elect me Supreme Chancellor. Give me emergency powers. He's making all of these like amazing maneuvers, and he's being very roguelike when he's like positioning and manipulating people to give him that power. But in a different respect, to be able to accomplish what Markion has accomplished by outlandishly being the bad guy and having all eyes on him, and not being able to operate from within the shadows, it's pretty impressive.
Very true.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, like, and for a lot of villains, that's what they do. They kind of operate for the shadows until they're ready to make their master swing, and then they show up. So to have him be, like you said, basically out there center stage, basically going, yeah, hi, I'm here. You can't do nothing is definitely, I would agree. The way you put that, I would put him above Palpatine in that perspective, for sure. And I mean, like, he's the main villain, but there's still other villains, like the Drengir, as an example. Such a cool addition to Star Wars lore. A bunch of carnivorous plants that roll and eat you. They like make Rathtars look like little teddy bears, in my opinion.
It's and the other thing about him, because he does have a sort of similar vein to Palpatine. I think about it. Palpatine is part of the Sith Grand Plan, lying in wait for 100 years. Markion is also the heir to a 100-year-long like wait and bide our time until we can come back, established by how much are we allowed to talk about Phase 2? Can I say?
We can talk about Phase 2. Phase 2 is fine. Yeah.
So Marta Rowe started her own little like "we'll come back when the time is right," where she built the seeds of what would become the Nile. And I think what's so notable about Markion is that certainly compared to his father, and to a similar extent to his grandmother, he had so much more vision. The way he bends what was otherwise like a chaotic and disorganized group of marauders into a fierce military force. He finds out about these evil plants, and suddenly they're working for him. You know, he finds these people like Baron Bulin, who seem to have completely disparate interests, but he manages to bend them to his will, not the least of which, you know, a certain species of other terrifying creatures that are just his pets. You know, he manages to spin everything around him to his convenience without, like, Palpatine's got the power of the Republic to do that. You know, he's got the Jedi working for him essentially already. Markion's all on his own, and yet he manages to, in a single year, put together a force that rivals that. It's impressive.
No, yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, I will say, and I say this jokingly because I've had this joke, none of the High Republic happens if Marta wasn't chasing Tail on her way to Planet X in Path of Vengeance. None of it happens.
Are we spreading the blame to Kev as well?
Yes, 100%. 100%. All he had to do was walk away. He just had to walk away.
Pretty girl.
He had to give her some Japor snippet, man.
And of course it had to be a Japor snippet. Of all things in the Star Wars galaxy to give someone you have feelings, it has to be a Japor snippet. Is that like, it's like the intergalactic symbol for I care about you.
Yeah. That'd be cute. Put that in a piece of folklore. A little Star Wars myth. Oh, Cavmo. I loved Cavmo.
God,
I had the dirtiest thought just now.
Now you have to share it. You can't say that and not share it. It's not my podcast stream, so if it gets in trouble, it's not mine. No.
Say whatever you want. They can't catch us. Oh.
I was thinking about a tattoo called "A Gift Freely Given," and then I was like thinking about it being like a tramp stamp or in a suggestive place.
That's pretty good.
That is pretty.
God, yeah.
Oh, that is good. Go ahead. Sorry, Alex.
I was going to mention, you know, High Republic has introduced a whole bunch of my favorite Jedi of all time. I'd say Reith easily makes that list. Bell, very high among their number, just because I love the stories that they're in, are Kevmo Zink and Loden Greatstorm, and they're why I have such an affinity for yellow lightsabers now. And boy, is that a rough... The High Republic has not been kind to me.
There is no greater example, I think, of what Pep used it earlier. Like, here's this Jedi that you love and now they're dead, than Loden Greatstorm. Here's Loden Greatstorm comes in, this like sarcastic, witty Jedi master to this timid Padawan Bell, tossing him off cliffs, and then he spends the rest of Phase 1 as a prisoner, getting tortured.
Mm-hmm. Just misery and death and I literally, you know, I mentioned the short story with Bell in Tales of Light and Life, and the present half is great, but there's the whole past half about him on a mission with Loden that, in my mind, is the perfect, like, if you want to see what a single Jedi should be and how a Jedi should operate, there is no better example than Loden Greatstorm in that story. Like, that is the ideal template. Everyone strive to do this.
Yeah. One of the other great things about the High Republic, and which was surprising to me, was all of the learners. Because just like in the prequels, we had just a limited number of Jedi, but we never see any Padawans learning things, right? And that is our greatest source of Jedi lore, is Padawans learning and getting like bits of knowledge from their master. And this is why I love Rupert. This is why I love Vernestra. This is why I love Reith. This is why I love Ram and all of the Padawans, because even though their stories position them to be in situations and scenarios that they can realistically solve and get out of those situations and those conflicts, they're still very much in a place of learning, and it's some of the best writing we'll get out of the Jedi lore that we have today. It's some of the best wisdom, some of the best teachings that we'll get from them in canon. You know, most of the stuff before this was based on conjecture, based on what Yoda would say or Qui-Gon would say. Oh, use your instincts. Well, that can mean a lot of things. Like, stretch out with your feelings. Okay. But to have these Padawans addressing things like love and crushes and all of these human emotions, anger. Was it? No, it wasn't Reeth. It was Imri. No, was it Reeth? Into the dark.
Into the dark was. Oh no,
when
not.
When he was like, should I disarm this Nile?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
that was
Reeth.
Was that Reeth or was that Dez?
No, Dez was. I think Dez was disappeared at that point.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, it was Reeth. You're right.
It was Reeth, and it sits heavily on him. Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even like building on that, what you were saying, Pat, about seeing Padawans, I think of like the High Republic Adventures line in both Phase 1 and Phase 3, following the likes of Lula and Zine and Court. Like that's such a Torben and just seeing that, like how they learn going through those two comic lines was such a unique perspective. And I mean, Lula is a great example of what you're talking about being able to deal with love and those types of feelings and getting the acceptance of what that meant to her. Yeah. And I won't spoil that because that's in Phase 3, but seeing the acceptance that she got for how that decision impacted her, never would have seen that with prequel era Jedi. Like it again, that rigidity and that hubris would have prevented that from ever even being a possibility.
Do we have canon confirmation that Mickeyans have a long lifespan?
I believe we do. Yes, I think we do.
I would love to see Zine in like Rey's New Jedi Order at like 200.
I think bordering on 300.
She'd be bordered on 300. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we got it in the Acolyte that the Miriellans can live for centuries. So we don't even know if Vernestra is like middle-aged by that.
True.
By that.
That is true.
Reference.
I'm just looking to see. I don't see anything saying that there's an average lifespan for them in canon. So maybe we haven't gotten anything specific, but that would be really cool. Everyone talks about wanting to see the likes of Grogu show up.
Woke, though. It's just another powerful woman.
It's too much for the fandom menace to handle. Well, and I think that was, and the other thing was, and I know, the woke thing, you did get a wide variety of characters in these books. And the really cool thing was that they were just characters. They were, whether it was Zylangraf, as an example, in Phase 2, or even the Bond twins as another example, Tarek and Sarat. Right? Like to see a galaxy full of characters be represented in various roles inside of the Jedi Order was really quite cool. Because obviously in the prequels we see Yoda, we see Yariel Poof so briefly, which that man is still ass in the High Republic. I think we can all agree on that one. But
I love the voice that Mark Thompson.
It's perfect.
A part of me still wishes, like, I want Mark to give his best. I'm the one who gets the pizzas. A part of me still wishes that was the official version of Yariel Poof we had. But
now that I think about it, as much as I love how he talks like this, I would have loved if they did a complete ambush on us and Yariel talks like Keanu Reeves.
It's me, Yariel Poof. Whoa, swinging into action.
People keep asking if I'm back.
That would be. Now I need to hear that. You're gonna have to record something for us, Pep, of Yariel Poof as Keanu Reeves.
Who else do we need voices for? I could do a walk-in for who?
Trying to think who would be a good one. Well, I mean, my favorite voice out of the High Republic has to be Oh, geez, now bring on blank. Space Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, Leox.
Leox, thank you. Like,
absolutely.
Like
Claudia really put in all right.
Yeah.
All right.
And I mean, like that was the fun. Like they embraced the weird in this. I mean, obviously you have Leox, who he's an asexual space Matthew McConaughey, who's quite happy to get high with people, and then you have Geode, who, I mean, might just be the most important character in the High Republic when you consider some of the things that have happened in Phase 3. But literally a character who never speaks a word, and yet I was in Celebration in Japan, and someone was there cosplaying as Geode. and they showed up to the High Republic meetup, and they walked to a certain place and then just stood there and didn't move for the rest of the time.
That's so good.
You should have had thought bubbles above the cosplay saying like a stoic expression.
Yes.
Or something.
I would love, God. I'm so excited. Tampa Comic-Con is coming up, I think in July, and this is the first one I'm going to since I've started like posting online. I'm so excited to see all the Star Wars cosplayers there because I can take like, little snippets and make a reel. What I wouldn't give for someone to be cosplaying Geode, I would instantly need to come up with like what's like a terrible joke I could tell to pan to the immaculate deadpan reaction of a Geode cosplayer.
Well, I mean, and this was the best place, is that this person was completely consumed by their Geo cosplay, so you couldn't even see their face.
Oh, yeah.
They had to be helped along when they walked because they probably literally couldn't see out of what they had put on. It was great.
Oh.
So one last question for us, and then we'll wrap up since we're coming up on our Disney mandated bonus time. If we don't stop by an hour and a half, we get in trouble. If you think about now, as we get into the end of the High Republic, and obviously Trials is out, we still have a few comics that come out this month and next month. How does the High Republic impact your perception of what happens through the Skywalker saga?
It's interesting. You go first.
So how does the High Republic for you change, add, or otherwise impact how you view the events in the Skywalker saga? Throw the heavy question right at the end instead of the softball. And like, I'll give you an example of what I see. And we've talked about it a few times. We've touched on it. Is to see where the Jedi start to go to where they show up in the prequels. Like to start to see those cracks form, as you talked about, Pep, compared to what they were in Light of the Jedi. It really changes how I see them in the prequels, especially in Episode 1, because you see this, autonomous, not even semi-autonomous, this autonomous group in Light of the Jedi. And by the time we get to Trials, they are much more tightly integrated with the Republic than they have ever been. And it really adds that context when you start to see how much control the Republic has over the Jedi Order in theory, but in terms of what they do. The High Republic adds a lot of that kind of rationale as to how that happens for me.
And yeah, it's funny, I mulled over this question a little bit as we were like prepping. I've been thinking about it all day because obviously it reflects a lot on the prequels. It's a mirror of what the Jedi should have been. There are obviously a lot of things that could be applied to Anakin, being about that same incarnation of the Jedi Order. And I think it only very lightly touches on the original trilogy, just because it's such a different galaxy you find yourself in at that point. But I think it's kind of interesting once you reach the sequel era. One thing I've talked about with people before, it comes up a lot in like the perception of what is balance in the Force. Did Anakin restore balance? What does balance mean? One thing that I've liked that's come up a couple of times is that a part of balance is the galaxy being willing to fight for itself. And in the prequels, and in the originals to an extent, like they're kind of expecting heroes to come along and fix things for them. Or the originals, I'd say it's more so they're complacent and the Empire is just what it is. No one can fix this. The prequels, it's very much like the Jedi will fix things. You know, there's a crisis. Oh, send out some Jedi. They'll take care of it. But Rise of Skywalker in particular shows that the galaxy has once more learned to stand up for itself. And I think that reflects very nicely on the High Republic, where a big focus, even to this very last book, is individuals, you know, people who aren't part of the Republic military, people who aren't part of the Jedi, but are still doing everything to help. Leox and Affy are, you know, figures mostly unrepresented by the time of the prequels. And I would say they're the predecessors to many of the individuals that stood up during the original trilogy, you know, the Leia Organas, who have had to show the rest of the galaxy how to operate like the High Republic did, how, you know, everyone needs to pitch in. We are all the Republic. Boy, We Are All the Republic ties in really nicely with that last moment from Rise of Skywalker, huh? The Citizens Fleet.
Yep, it really does.
It's also one of my other favorite moments.
It's fun. I really didn't like that moment in the theater. Like that and I Am All the Jedi both kind of struck me as like, this feels like an Endgame knockoff. This feels like, I don't know, cheap. But the Citizens Fleet has grown on me so much as like I've gotten further out from the movie, you know. I liken it constantly to It's a Wonderful Life, where, you know, things can look bleak and it can feel like you're alone, but you've done so much for so long for everybody in the galaxy that finally it's their turn to repay the favor and to finish what, you know, Leia unfortunately wasn't able to. And I love that we finally in the comics just got what did Lando say to them that got everyone there. And I think they nailed his speech.
I gotta read that. I haven't gotten to that one yet. I've been so focused on trials for this week.
It's good. It's good. His speech is perfect, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think my view on the prequels and the sequels doesn't really change much. I was operating on the assumption that this was the Jedi that we were supposed to get. I mean, Guinness says in the first one, for 1,000 years we served as guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy. And when I saw the prequels, I knew immediately when Palpatine was sitting across the desk from Yoda in the Jedi Council. I was like, yeah, something's wrong here. Like,
you guys have kind of slipped up a little bit.
Well, I mean, yeah, I remember the debate, and it still sticks out to me as one of the most absurd things, the debate about whether or not Palpatine was the Emperor. It was like, it's literally the same actor from Return of the Jedi. How can you not think these are the same people?
Also, he didn't have a first name until Tarkin, the book Tarkin.
Correct.
But I think he wasn't. There was no edition that called him Emperor Palpatine.
I think the novels did. It's really just people didn't read the books, but yeah, like the original Return of the Jedi novelization, I do believe refers to Emperor Palpatine. I think A New Hope might even. But yeah, there were certainly people who said like, this isn't just speculation, this is a fact, but most people don't read the books.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to fault them for that, but like, for sure, like, when he's like cozying up to Anakin in Phantom Menace, you're like, this ain't no normal dude. Like, what do you mean you're gonna watch his career with great interest? Like, do you say that to all the Padawans you meet?
That might have been the first Padawan he met, given that was the first Padawan we saw, and only the second Padawan we saw in Star Wars live action at that point.
That's and you know, what is it? Yoda and Mace Windu say like, always a master and an apprentice there are, but which was this? The master and the apprentice. And then it cuts straight to his face, like, geez. Yes. Are we really speculating?
That's one of those things that Star Wars does, where it stares you straight in the eyes.
Yeah.
And that's when most fans kind of clock out, and they're like, "Well, I don't get it," you know. I didn't see that coming. Like one of the comments I got in my recent Acolyte video, not to make this about the Acolyte. Well, the Acolyte's in
Well,
the High
it's part of the
Republic.
High Republic.
They were like, they were trying to articulate their problems with the writing, and they were asking, well, why does May betray Kymir, and then when she sees the Jedi, she changes her mind and starts to run away, and then she wants to reunite with Osha, but then leaves Osha on the planet. And all I could like from the rip, all I can think of was, did you watch the episode?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she doesn't from Olega, she didn't know Osha was alive, right? And then from her conversation with Kymir, she wants to turn herself in for the murder of Indara, but she wants to make things right with Osha. She wants to reunite with her, so she betrays Kymir, ties him up into the tree. That's the motivation for her. Osha is the motivation for her to betray Kymir. As soon as she learns that her master is on the planet, she's like, no one is surviving this.
Yeah.
I'm
Peace.
bolting. That's her motivation for running away. But then she sees Osha's also on Kofar. So then she tries to reunite with her while running away from her master. And then she tries to tell Osha, you know, they've been lying to you. They've brainwashed you. You don't know what happened that night. And Osha, you know, is still very hesitant in believing this. And so they have a little showdown, and May knocks her out. But like, if you're not watching the part where she cuts off her locks to look like Osha, it's like she wants to get a confession out of Soul. She wants to hear Soul say the words.
Yeah.
That's why she leaves her there and goes with Soul. Where the plan goes awry is Soul finds out that that's not really Osha. And so like that's when the rest of I don't want to like play by play this entire show, but that's when the rest of the show happens. Like, watch these shows, like, use context clues. Like, I love that the commenter was asking, why did all this happen? Now you have to game it out. You have to steelman this and try to answer those questions. Because asking, why did Luke exile himself? It's like, great question. Now you have to try to find the answer. Instead of saying, why did Luke exile himself? He would never, writing bad. Like, you have to find, like, I think it was I hate to point to this, but it was an interview with Matthew Stover that Theory did. And he was like, what did you think of The Last Jedi and what they did with Luke? And Matthew Stover's like, well, you have to ask yourself, what did he see? What could possibly make that Luke Skywalker that you know to be optimistic and positive and a shining beacon? What could have happened to make him make that decision? And Theory's like, I never thought of it that way. He's like, ask these questions. You're reading books, you're watching movies, like,
but it also
that doesn't make sense. How does that happen?
Yeah.
Why did that happen?
Yeah. Instead, you're right. Like, for the most part, it's like, why did that happen? They would never do that. Bad writing. And it's like, no, come on. Like, you have to put a little bit of effort in. Put just a little bit.
Or at least listen to the reasons he's about to tell you.
Yes, exactly. That too.
I as soon as you said, you know, where you're going, I knew you were going to mention that Matthew Stover interview. I love that interview. I think of it all the time. Every time I like ever question, you know, someone brings up, oh, Mark Hamill hated The Last Jedi, which also isn't true. But if someone says like, oh, would George Lucas have liked it? I'm like, all those are interesting. If Matthew Stover likes it, I'm 100% confident in being on this side. Matthew Stover, in my opinion, if he said he didn't like any movie I do, I would immediately doubt my own opinions. He's got such a lock on this series as far as I'm concerned. He can tell me which ones not to like.
There's also a huge failing of like correlation here, because like Mark Hamill never said The Last Jedi sucks. He says I disagreed with Rian Johnson's vision of Luke, right? But like, I can have that disagreement with the both of you guys as to the direction of the High Republic, but I think we would all still leave the conversation being like, the High Republic's pretty great.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
He's only ever said it was a great movie. That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
they'll point to like, oh, he disagrees with the direction they've taken this character, but yeah, I don't think he's ever once said this isn't going to be a good movie.
No. Well, I mean, and he even said in that same interview, I was wrong.
Mhm.
Like almost immediately after that, he goes, I was wrong. I've been seeing the finished movie. I was wrong. But they always
But even in an
conveniently leave that out.
earlier interview from that, when he says, I've had trouble seeing what Ryan saw for Luke, but he also says, but I also think it's great to be pushed out of your comfort zone, because if I were to be another benevolent Jedi training young Padawans, it would be boring. So it's not like I disagreed with Ryan Johnson. Was his holistic stance on everything,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
He had this understanding of Luke that was very close to him, and then Ryan was presenting him with a different view that he couldn't reconcile with, and that should be isolated right then and there. That's their disagreement right there. The rest of the movie has nothing to do with that disagreement. And he's also disagreed with George Lucas.
Yeah.
If you watch the interviews with Return, when the title was still Revenge of the Jedi, and I think it was a radio interview, he was saying he was telling George, Luke should fall to the dark side here, and George was like, no.
Well, and I mean, like that's even happened in the High Republic. Like I think we can probably all agree that the live action depiction of Vern in The Acolyte was a very divided reaction, with a number of people saying this is not the Vern from the High Republic. Why would she ever act like this? And it's like, but you see, like, one, the High Republic wasn't done, and I think we've gotten more context clues through the story of Vernestra in Phase 3 to start to see where she might get to that point. But also,
she's also 17.
Yes,
it's been 100-something years.
Yes, exactly. It's been 100. Like, I mean, Yoda in the High Republic is vastly different from Yoda in the prequels. Yoda in the and even in the original trilogy. Yoda in the original trilogy is basically Roger Murtaugh. I'm too old for this shit at this point. Whereas in the High Republic, he is an active training master. So like, people change. It happens. Just because.
Go for it. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, just because someone is presented one way in one time era does not mean that they get frozen in time for the rest of their life.
Yeah. I like to think that, like, if High Republic Yoda were to time travel to Phantom Menace, and Ki-Adi-Mundi says, the Sith have been extinct for a millennia, High Republic Yoda been like, shut up, bitch. But the prequel Yoda was like, hard to see the dark side.
So who let this guy on the council?
Yeah.
You were that idiot in the small council too.
They saw him eat a plain ice cone and assumed he was a safe choice.
You need safe choices sometimes.
Headcanon, Yoda absolutely hates Ki-Adi-Mundi. Can't stand the guy.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah,
he was better
that's
too.
when I knew. That's when I knew he was neurodivergent and like autistic presenting, and I was like, it probably makes sense that you know he is the way he is, and I'm not gonna fault him for it, but
no.
Again, still annoying.
Still the worst. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Any last thoughts on the High Republic here before we wrap up? Any last nuggets of encouragement that we want to offer the folks watching?
Yeah. My favorite. So, it has now eclipsed with what I've read so far with the conclusion, and I'm still gonna read Wayseeker, but I decided to wait and not spoil myself. But High Republic has eclipsed the Old Republic for me. And if you're a huge fan of the old, first of all, I was gonna say Republic.
Yeah. Ooh.
That is Satele, that is Malgus, that is Bogan and Ashla, and you know how much it means to somebody when they immortalize it in their skin. But I feel like now I have to get a High Republic somewhere, and
Full
it's
chest geode.
also a note on Geode. I thought he was geosexual, but he's actually, given what we've read, probably pan.
Oh yeah.
I say pan. Geode gets around.
I mean, that's still my greatest disappointment of the Acolyte, that we did not see Geode macking on someone in a bar in that series.
Probably would have macked on May.
Oh, probably.
Imagine
Like,
being the
attack me
actor.
with all your strength, and Geode's sitting there like this, and then May looks at him and she's like, "What are you looking at?"
I've directed before in like shorts and stuff, and I can't imagine the experience of walking up to an actor and saying, "Hey, so for this scene, you need to make out with The Rock, and you need to really be feeling it." I'm talking, he is hitting every button right. This Rock gets around. This Rock knows how to party.
Yeah, but yeah, if listen, like the Old Republic is my favorite of the Legends continuity, and to eclipse that, something special, at least for me personally, has to have happened, and something truly special has happened with the High Republic. And I think if you want to get on the ground level of a new era in Star Wars, the High Republic is the place to be. If you want your very own New Jedi Order or Legacy and Fate of the Jedi, this is the era, because I'm pretty sure, along with their continuing publishing efforts, that's going to stretch past the Rise of Skywalker. I'm pretty sure they're going to hit the Old Republic when Dawn of the Jedi comes out. Like, that time period is fully established. So I think, with the new canon expanded universe, it's going to get big. So get in on that. Get in on the High Republic. It has a beginning, it has an end, so you don't have to feel like you're, constantly watching One Piece, So you got a couple books to read, you've got the High Republic, and then you can love that era.
What about you, Alex? Any last words?
I mean, that really hits the nail on the head. I think it's one of the most extraordinary larger projects I've read so far, as much as I've loved like a lot of the Legend stuff. And I think it's such a shame that there are so many fans, people who loved the old books and there are people on both sides of this who either say like, oh, Legends was never canon and it's all garbage, or will say that like, oh, Disney betrayed Legends fans and they cut it off at the head. I think it's such a shame to willingly miss out on this. Like I said earlier today, I am not going to let my tastes in fiction be dictated by the marketing department of a mega corporation. Like, if it's good writing, it's good writing, and this is some of the best Star Wars we've had since anything. I recommend it to everyone, Legends or canon, and I think you're just missing out if you're not reading it. You should be reading it.
Yeah. I agree. Like, so for me, I grew up I had the original trilogy on Betamax to date myself, which is what I grew up on. I grew up reading Young Jedi Knights. I grew up reading New Jedi Order. Those places in the EU always held a special place for me, because that was the way for me to see the stories of my heroes, of Luke and of Han and what they did in the galaxy. And the High Republic has surpassed all of that for me. Like, it has been such a complete, engaging storyline from start to finish, with characters, whether they're main ones like Avar and Elzar and Buryaga, or whether they are bit players. Like, I mean, my favorite character in the High Republic is Porter Engle. He has been my favorite character since he showed up making his 9-egg stew in Light of the Jedi. Like, there's this just like a happy-go-lucky Jedi chef who turns out to be probably the most lethal lightsaber duelist you'll ever see in the Star Wars galaxy.
I might get Barash Sylvain right next to Satele right here.
Oh, I'm planning to I want to get For Light and Life on my arm here. Like, because that line in Light of the Jedi hit with me on so many levels. Not just because it was such a cool, like, catchphrase, cheer for the Jedi. But with what was happening where I was in life when that came out, it kind of hit on so many different levels for me, and it has stuck with me since that first book. This has hit on an emotional level for me. These stories, I'm not ashamed to admit that in a lot of them, where characters who I'm quite attached to move on, I have to put that book down and stop for a minute or two to collect myself, which I think speaks to the quality of the storytelling. To your point, Alex, is that we latch on to these characters who may show up for, I think, other than the Blade miniseries, which was 4 issues, which focused on Porter. Porter shows up for a grand total of maybe 10 chapters of the entire High Republic outside of Light of the Jedi. And yet every time he shows up, yes. I agree. If you're looking to get it on the ground level, if you're looking for something new, if you're looking for something that's like the EU, the High Republic is that. And you should definitely go in with an open mind, without the preconceptions of, it's not as good as New Jedi Order. About just read it and enjoy it and follow these characters and their stories.
It's certainly better than the Crystal
media.
Star.
Yeah, and we don't consume media for the sake of it being better than the previous.
No.
Right? It doesn't have to be as good as New Jedi Order. It doesn't have to be as good as your favorite piece of media from Star Wars ever written. Right? It's there to be a part of the mythos that you know of Star Wars. So I could have read the entire High Republic and it not being better than the Old Republic, but it's still an era there that I know, that I appreciate, that I love. And the same thing goes with all of Star Wars, really. It's not everybody, but there are some fans that just need Star Wars to be peak all the time. Otherwise, it's not worth it, right?
Yeah.
And I was looking up this one comment I got that said, "Dude, I know supporting new Star Wars is your thing, but you can't defend the writing of the Acolyte." And I said,
"Oh God."
I was like, it's not my thing. I'm a freaking Star Wars fan. Supporting new Star Wars is what fans do.
Yes.
And it's I don't know where they get this modus of you're a fan, but you can only be a fan if it's good. It's no, I can be a fan if it's also bad. I can acknowledge projects that are bad to me because there are some things of it that I enjoy, but it's also still Star Wars. I have my guilty pleasures. I can sit there and have a marathon of Fast and Furious and be like, these are pretty shit movies, but God, do I love them, and they're enjoyable as hell. Ejecto-cito, cuz. But that's what being a fan is. It's what enjoying entertainment is.
Yeah.
I grew up with Sonic the Hedgehog. I know this well.
Oh. and I mean, don't make your whole personality if you don't like it. It's fine if you don't like it. Do what the rest of us do. That wasn't for me. Moving on.
Yeah.
And then you're done.
It's funny that the Star Wars fandom in particular is so full of people who will say if you like the new stuff, if you're not with me, you're my enemy. And it's so full of people who say you have to hate this. It's always focused on you have to dislike a certain amount of Star Wars. And I cannot think of a series more than Star Wars that is about the importance of not hating things.
Yeah.
It's true.
And it's also oh man, I had a train of thought and then it just kind of derailed in a half a second. Anyways,
that's okay. If it comes back to you while we're doing the outro, just fire it out there and we'll keep going. That's fine. But I think that's a great place to stop for today and to kind of wrap up. I hope for the people that are watching that we've piqued their interest enough to go pick up a book. Light of the Jedi is a great entry point. Test of Courage is a great entry point if you're looking for something smaller and shorter to start with. But go pick up the books and read them. Go for it. I saw you had it back. Go.
It was just a final thought. Because of what I'm dealing with now with my videos, we realized that Andor was such a huge success that the grift is slow these days.
Yeah, it's
You
too
got to go
good.
back to the acolyte.
Yes. We are having the same 2-year-old, 1 year, like year old, 1.5 year old arguments that we had last year. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That's when you know that you don't have a lot to complain about anymore.
Yeah, they tried with
That's
Andor and got laughed out of the room. The old
Hey, man.
Vader wouldn't tolerate sexual
Bricks.
assault, and
Oh God.
people booed him out of there.
They got booted out when they started talking about bricks and
Well,
screws.
I mean,
But
same thing. Like I saw a clip. I think it was from Khan. I saw a clip of not to drag things out, but I saw a clip from Theory finally. Of,
yes, I saw
Andor.
that.
Where
And
he
said,
had a moment of clarity.
yeah, and then he brought it back to Acolyte again. I was like, dude, like
He
You
was so
were
close.
you-
so
he probably realized that like his review of Andor was getting so rationally positive that he was like, oh man, but the Acolyte though, I think it's the Acolyte. Jesus Christ.
Gotta find
You-
something to complain about anywhere.
You were so close to getting around that wall, and then you decided to turn around and smack your face into it.
That's because he's surrounded by walls.
Yeah, pretty much.
Surrounded by
Anyways, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I always appreciate your perspectives, whether it's Diet in the Force, or whether, Alex, it's your videos that I've been watching on TikTok. You guys bring a lot of wealth and positive knowledge to the fandom, so thank you for that. Before we kind of do, give everyone your socials and what you're up to, I want to say a quick thank you and congratulations to Luke and Alanis for their upcoming wedding this weekend. Wish you guys nothing but the best. Luke, thank you for trusting me with this. Hopefully you'll let me back on the show sometime soon. But all the best and enjoy the weekend ahead to you both. Alex, where can the good people find you on the social medias? What are you up to? And what is your favorite quote from the High Republic?
Ooh, I'm gonna need to think about that while I plug everything. I'm on primarily TikTok is where I post everything. Some stuff does make it to Instagram and YouTube, but I've been terrible at keeping up with those, and I'm gonna try more. You can find me at Alex Lezio, just like it's written here. My favorite quote from the High Republic is gonna be, it's a simple one, but it's in Light of the Jedi, Loading Great Storm, like I said, my all-time favorite, and it's just showing how the Jedi should treat situations where they come across this opposition. This guy saying, what Jedi, you gonna fight your way through all of us? You gonna break your way through the walls? And Loden just smiles and goes, sure, why not? Perfect. He's the best.
No, that's great. Pep, where can the good people of the internet find you? And what are you working on? And what is your favorite quote from the High Republic?
Yeah, you can find me on TikTok _element7_gang. You can also find me and Darth Chaco on Diet in the Forest on YouTube. We go live every Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific. And what I'm working on is essentially it's a lore about series that I started with Revan like a long time ago that I never truly finished. And basically, I'm starting with Heir to the Empire, but I'm also going to do the Revan book. So what that series essentially is going to take people through those stories chapter by chapter, so that if you hadn't read Revan, if you hadn't read Heir to the Empire, Fate, Legacy, all of those books, you have a playlist where you can go through chapter by chapter what's happening, and I'll break everything down for you. So that you're no longer operating from a place of net negative knowledge, where if someone brings up Revan to you and be like, oh, I saw this whole series on the books, like I essentially read the book, but I know more about Revan than you, because most of those people don't actually know anything about Revan. They just know, oh, he has a cool purple and red lightsaber, and he's a Darth, and he was cool before Anakin was cool. But essentially, the lore about series is just reading the books and then providing a chapter by chapter breakdown for each video, just so if you're interested in reading the books, you can read the books. But if you're also interested in just learning about what the book entails, then you can watch the that playlist of each chapter, so you know what happens in the book. It's kind of essentially me because I keep a lore Bible and I take notes about everything that I read and watch. It's essentially me sharing my notes for each book that that exists. Essentially, I will be starting with Heir to the Empire and then like going through chronologically the post Return of the Jedi EU series, and then Revan, starting with Revan in the Old Republic. I was going to do the Bane trilogy, but I ended up just kind of like blitzing through that back in the day, and I didn't write notes. We'll see if I revisit it. You'll see the success of the Lore About series, because for sure, I mean, I'm starting with Revan for obvious reasons. He's the number one gatekeeper that toxic fans use, and if more and more people know about Revan, more and more people will be like, I don't think you understand who Revan is.
Yeah.
Especially if you refer to him as Darth Revan first, because he's more famous as Jedi Knight than
Yes.
he is Darth. But I digress.
But Darth gives him the cool mask, and that's what everyone knows about him.
Yeah. But they don't know where he got it.
That's true. And that is why that and that lore Bible of yours, which I've seen in a few of your videos, is why I will never go up against you in any sort of trivia ever.
I think we were on the
path to being, it was, and then it, thankfully for my own ego, I didn't have to go through with it.
But remember, like, this is with all things, like, if you guys have questions about being a lore master, like, having a lore Bible is essentially just a compendium of everything that you found worthy of writing down. But when it comes to, like, even though I have the first Padawan's belt, like,
yep,
it's not like I can recall all that shit off the top of my head at any given moment. Like, one of my friends sent me a link to, are you part of the Star Wars 1% Club? And it was 5 questions, and the 5th question was, if you got it right, you would be 1% Club. I didn't get it. Like I don't care about TC-14 in the Phantom Menace. You see him for like 4 seconds.
Like, I was going to say
5 minutes.
He walks out of the smoky room with the cups and goes, "Oh dear," and then walks by.
Yeah, that's not something that I take pride in knowing. I mean, it's in my lore Bible. I can show you then. I didn't remember that at the time of taking that quiz. So yeah.
No,
like, do I remember the details from the movie that aren't important or interesting? No.
Unfortunately for my ADHD brain, yes. Which is why.
That would have been a question that you won over me.
Oh, well, that's good. I'm going to keep that in my head now. I'm going to make sure Luke puts that question.
Too.
I know. But what is your favorite quote from the High Republic, Pep?
I forget which book. Maybe it was Test of Courage. Maybe it was Light or Into the Dark. But I think it's from Skier, who says the path to the dark side is a deliberate one, and not just a series of bad days.
Yeah,
because it goes hand in hand with what in Master and Apprentice, where he says we choose the light every day because it is the light.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It also reminds me with my favorite quote from New Jedi Order, where Luke says, I may be jumbling the order of sentences, but he says, there is no rainbow force. There is no room for gray. We either walk the path of the light or we fall to the darkness. And that's the number one quote that I quote to people who are like, hey, I love Grey Jedi. It's like...
Then yeah, you like a different series.
Yeah.
You like a different set of wizards. It's funny. That reminds me, I didn't remember that quote about Skier, but I'm going to look it up because I do really like that. It reminds me of one of my favorite just interactions in fiction is Batman and the Joker. Their whole constant back and forth is Joker believes it's just one bad day could make anyone like him, but the repeated lesson that Batman has to teach him is no, it's a choice, and you made that choice.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, for someone who doesn't show up in the books a lot, but obviously plays a big role in the comics, Skier has some great lines.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and in fact, one of my favorite quotes is also from Skier. It's from the High Republic comic line, and it is, "There are no shortcuts on the light's path. We strive, we repeat, we succeed." And it's just, I mean, it's just so good because it's so true. You have to make that choice every day.
I mean, I'm gonna plug my own fanfic for a quote that I coined, which is essentially, it is our job as Jedis to keep the path lit, so that the people that follow us can see the braziers shine and follow the same path.
I like that. That's good. I like that.
I could plug my own fanfic quotes, but they're all NC-17. I don't think a lot
We'll
about
save that.
rippling muscles.
We'll save that for Podwans
Stroking-
After Dark.
Stroking Lekus.
Your Schwartz is as big as mine.
Oh, well, good people can find me at NDWiseguy. I am primarily on TikTok. I also am on Blue Sky. I avoid any Elon Musk or Meta-owned social networks. I will be talking a lot about the Trials of Jedi in the next week because I just finished it today. And there is a lot to unpack in that story. I talk about the High Republic all the time anyways. You can find Luke, Harith, Char, and Chase here on the Pod Ones every Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, where they will continue to talk about all things Star Wars. Gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your insights and your time. I think the best way to end this off is we are all the Republic, and for light and for life. Good night.